As useful as the text and concept searches are, there's other ways to find information in the system that don't even require you to do that. So you could actually start with sort of more general characteristics to start to look for comparative data that you might want to do use in an upcoming research question. So, for example, without typing anything over here in the dropdown, I could actually just start in this central screen where you see, for example, we have a map filter. And if I click on that, you can see that several places on the planet, as indicated by these markers on a map, exist within our particular instance of Arches for Science. And so several things have been associated with a place. I'm looking for information in this context of objects from the part of the world that the Byzantine Empire was active in. So maybe I don't need everything that may be associated with a place. I really only want the physical things, the manuscripts, the paintings, etc. And we see that the map zooms and shows me a much tighter series of places. As it happens, we've really only uploaded the data from the Byzantine example here, so you see several places that are associated with the Byzantine Empire. So I could select one of these and see that there's objects associated with that, whether this is a place in Sicily or specific items that may be associated with these locations. So the map is one way to search. The other thing to recognize here is that Byzantium, the area or the culture that I'm interested in looking at objects from, is in fact both a place on the map, but also a time or a time span. And so it might be helpful to know that there's a way to search on time. This is something that we call the time wheel, and you see it here. And what you see here in the sort of center of this right-hand panel is that there are just over 1,000 date values associated with all of the data that's been imported into this Arches for Science instance. I'm interested in the Byzantine Empire, which lasts from about 400, until Constantinople falls in 1453. So that's the time period I'm interested in, not all times. So this wheel allows me to start to limit the time that I'm interested in. So you can see here this arc that's shown in orange represents the millennium from 1000 to 2000, which you can see in that same central portion of the right panel. Whereas this blue wedge here represents the millennium between 0 and 1000. And there's even a tiny little wedge right here that represents the time period between 2000 and 3000. So which time period is most relevant to what I'm looking for? I'm going to pick this first arc. If I kind of move my cursor out to the next ring on this time wheel, we'll see that this half of the arc represents the 500 years between 1000 and 1500, whereas this is the period between 1500 and 2000. As I said, Constantinople falls in 1453, so dates after 1500 are pretty meaningless to me, so I care more about this. And so on and so forth. We can go out and find, you can see this outer wheel drops it to centuries. So I'm going to pick a particular one that's towards the end of the Byzantine period and select it. And having clicked there, you'll notice that what happened over here in the upper right is that a time filter was applied to the data, and we're now showing only 113 results. And so now only objects that have a date associated with the century between 1100 and 1200 are being shown. And again, just like we did before, I can now start to explore specific objects that are in that list. As you can already see here, this ability to search, you can link multiple searches together. So right now we have the time filter. It is still limited to physical things since I'm interested in manuscripts. And I could now add a word. So I could add that Byzantine search if I wanted to, which gets us down to only 4 results. So I'm starting to learn that there's actually not that much data that I might need to look at before I start my initial study. So hopefully this gives you a sense that there's several ways to start to explore the data that's present in the system, to visualize what data is present, and to start to find the data that you may want to reuse as your research progresses.